Welcome to the Women Writing Podcast. I'm your book coach, Liisa Kovala. I'm an author accelerator, certified fiction and memoir book coach, and the author of Like Water for Weary Souls, Sisters Winter War, Surviving Struthoff, and the upcoming Hygge House Cozy Mystery Series. As a Finnish Canadian, I also love my coffee. Take a coffee break with us as we chat about all things writerly with authors and publishing industry professionals. And don't forget to sign up for my Women Writing newsletter on Substack and subscribe to my YouTube channel for more great content. On today's episode of Women Writing, I'm having a coffee break with Katie Welch. Ladder to Heaven is Katie Welch's second novel. Her debut, Mad Honey, was nominated for the 2023 OLA Evergreen Prize. She is a two-time alumnus of the Banff Centre and was a finalist for the 2023 CBC Short Story Prize. A music teacher and an advocate for nature, Katie enjoys being outside and active with her family. She lives in Kamloops and on Cortes Island, BC. Hi, Katie. How are you?
Hi, Lisa. I'm really well. How are you?
I'm so good. Thanks for doing this. This is lovely to meet you online, I guess, as I say.
Thanks so much for having me. It's great to be here.
Yeah, amazing. So before we started recording, we were talking about the weather and how the lack of snow you have and the excess of snow we have. And you're in Kamloops and I'm in Northern Ontario. And we're talking about just like even climate change and all the kinds of issues we're having. And I noticed that when I was just I don't do a ton of research, let's be honest, but I do look into people's websites and peek around. And my sense from you is that you're a real advocate for the environment, for nature. Am I getting this right? Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yes, you're totally getting that right. So I came out, I grew up in Ottawa and I went to university in Toronto. And then I took up tree planting to pay my way through university. And after I graduated with my degree in English, I couldn't get a job right away. So I wound up becoming a professional tree planter and coming out west.
Amazing.
And even back in Ontario, after I'd seen the forest and seen what was going on out there, I became really passionate about trying to preserve what nature we had left. I actually locked myself to a bulldozer in the Temagami forest, old growth forest.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was, what was I, 18 or something?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and then activism stayed a part of my life. Most recently, I joined in Extinction Rebellion.
Okay.
When they were building the Trans Mountain Pipeline out here. And so that's the costumed troupe that started in England, where we made these red costumes and wore white makeup, very stark, very frightening looking. And that was a really intense experience doing that in Kamloops. So I received a lot of death threats online, and we had things thrown at us from moving cars. So yeah, I realized this is an issue that people are very passionate about.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's incredible. So you really had that inner sense of direction early on, like tree planting. I remember my brother tree planting here in Sudbury because of well, my dad was part of the crew and of building the smokestack, so the super stack that is now coming down in Sudbury. So that was he was part of the carpentry crew and a foreman on that job. And of course, we were sending then all our emissions to everybody else. But meanwhile, before the super stack was here, like we have such black rock and we had stunted trees and all the things. And I remember my brother in the 70s being part of those crews who went out and planted a zillion trees. And now Sudbury is actually really beautiful with the amount of foliage we have now compared to then. And I mean, we still have black rock because I mean that's not going to go away, but they've I think it's even won awards for like regreening and all the things. So I mean, it is possible, I guess, to reclaim those areas. But it sounds like that experience, just being a tree planter, put you on a trajectory, right?
It really did. That's a really hopeful story. Thanks for sharing that about Sudbury, because growing up in Ontario, Sudbury was sort of infamous. Yeah, it was it started looking like the moon, and it's really great to hear that it's regreened. And we don't hear enough of those kinds of stories. That's a very short. I mean, I'm in my late 50s. That's a very short space of time. It's only about 30 years between it looks like the moon and it's actually quite beautiful and green. So we can turn these things around.
Right. Yeah, I feel like hopeful because I have some pictures where we lived as a kid. Uh we had a lake behind us, and then behind us was sort of some, I don't know, they're not mountains, there's some hills, rocky hills, and a little bit of a few trees. And so those early photos of me standing on that balcony, everything's really, really sparse. And of course, you can see the smokestack in the distance as well. And then later photographs, it's just full, like it's just green, it's beautiful. So, like you say, I think it is possible to change, but people have to be deliberate, right, about it. It's not like just, oh, let's hope it gets better. You actually have to take action and do something
Yeah.
about it. So you're somebody who takes action. You see a cause, you see something that needs to happen, and you stand up for it, it seems.
Yeah, well, I mean, COVID sort of ground everything to a halt for me, and I've yet to find another niche that's. I mean, Extinction Rebellion sort of came and went in Western Canada, and anyway, it didn't really go. It sort of went over like
Yeah.
I'm not sure it changed a lot of minds or hearts. So I'm looking for that next thing to do. I mean, I do it. It's in my fiction.
Yes. Well, I was going to go there. I love that. Because, okay, let's talk about that because that's what I noticed when I was reading about Mad Honey, your first book in Ladder to Heaven. And you in both, I think you have a strong sense of place and strong sense of environment and nature. Can you tell us? Let's talk about Mad Honey first, because that was the first one, right?
Yes.
Talk about that one a little bit. What was it about, and where was it? What influenced it, I guess?
Well, it was set in Lanark County, just west of Ottawa, and that was somewhere where there was an environmental studies program at my high school. It was one of those really progressive programs that were offered by some high schools, and we actually had 5 out trips a year, and one of them was to that area, and we learned how to keep bees,
Wow.
and that experience really stuck with me.
Amazing.
And I would visit apiaries. Like beekeepers are a very specific breed. I think they're very, very fascinating people to me, and also very welcoming. Anytime I approached a beekeeper, they said, "Oh, do you want to come see my hives?" So
Yes.
I did that quite a bit. And when I first got the opportunity to write, which is a whole other story, a story that occurred to me was that there would be someone who was so passionate about beekeeping that they became convinced that they had become a bee colony, that their individual cells had undergone a quantum transformation and they'd lived as a bee colony. So that was the genesis of Mad Honey.
Oh, so good. Is I just have to pause on Lanark County for a second because that's like Perth and Carleton Place and all of those. And I lived in Perth for a year, and when I was a young teacher, and I lived in Carleton Place for a couple of years when I was first teaching, and it's such a beautiful landscape, sort of lots of farms and open spaces and big sky. It's really a pretty area and very close to Ottawa, so it was, nice to be able to just pop into Ottawa, but be living in that area. So cool. And I too have seen a beekeeper, like in I want to say in Saskatchewan, and fascinating. And I think you're right. There's a certain kind of person who can be a beekeeper and then is totally involved and gets their joy from that work. Like it's incredible. So I love that you drew on those experiences as a young person to write the first novel. How did that come to be? Like, were you always a writer? Were you always writing as a high school student, or how'd that go?
I always wanted to be a writer from a very, very young age. My sister had a lot of nightmares, and I would tell her stories, and she would become riveted with these stories. And there was a performative aspect to it. When I learned to write and started writing these stories down, I really wanted people to enjoy them. And I had lots of success in high school. I wrote for my yearbook. Our high school closed, and I wrote the eulogy for the yearbook. I had articles published, and then after university, when I started trying to write creatively, a couple of things happened. I needed money, and there wasn't any money, and um, and my first rejections and realizations that the writing wasn't quite good enough yet, and that just ended the entire my life took a giant left turn. I had to go to work. I went tree planting out west, and nothing happened writing wise for 20 years.
That is so fascinating to me because I think that's the case for a lot of people, right? They have a love. They're I taught high school English for a long time, and because everyone can, writes something, I think a lot of people think they're good writers, but actually, there's really great writers in a high school class, and then there's like your average writers. Like there's nothing wrong with that, but there's just always a handful, maybe not even, of writers who you can see they have a talent that will bring them to something else. And to feel those early rejections and say, okay, I need to step back. I think that's not uncommon. People feel like they're, when they receive a rejection, either in school from a teacher or from publishers or whatever, it's really easy to go, okay, well, maybe this isn't for me. But yet, really, I think of my 20-year-old self, I wish I had also been more persistent then, and I didn't have it in me until later. Like you say, 20, 30 years later, it's like, okay, I can do this.
Yeah, that was my experience as well. And then just the time on my hats are off to these women who can balance a baby and a job and also carve out that niche of time to write. But that wasn't me. When I had babies and jobs and a little farm to run, I just didn't have any extra time.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that's good to understand that there are different phases and seasons in life, right? That you're focused on this and I'm focused on this. And there's a time where you can pivot to something else. And that's perfectly fine. And like the fact that like people say it all the time, but it's so true. It's never too late. Like you don't have to have been doing this since you were 10 or whatever. Like you can be, 70 and start your first book. We hear about those stories all the time that people are, you come to it whenever you come to it. But I do love that you're drawing on nature and on that farm life and beekeeping and all of those things. And then your second book is Ladder to Heaven. Can you tell us a little bit about that story?
Sure. Well, Ladder to Heaven began as a short story, imagining a woman who had retreated from the world and from her personal problems and the larger problems of the world, and was living beside a lake. All by
sounds like my ideal situation right now already. Like, can I just do that, please?
She didn't have anywhere nice to, I mean, she was living in a shack, and she didn't have enough food, and so it was pretty rough,
right,
life. And in that place, I wanted her to be. I was thinking a lot about addiction issues at the time, and I wanted her to be getting clean and sober, but white knuckling it. Mm-hmm. And not knowing it. And so she began to have auditory hallucinations, or she thinks maybe they are. She is so in touch with the animals that are around her that she thinks she can hear them speaking. And I wanted the reader of the story to not know whether she was actually hearing the animals speaking, or if that was a hallucination from withdrawal from drugs. So that was the genesis of Dulcimera, who's the protagonist of Ladder to Heaven.
Great name. I love that both books have this intersection of I don't even know how to describe it. How do you describe it? Like the real and the possibly imaginary or hallucinatory, or possibly maybe real and not knowing. Like I think there's like with the and thinking you're a bee colony, like that's a very specific thing. Like probably most of us have not experienced that exact thing. But I think more people may relate to the idea that they can be in touch with nature or with animals or trees or whatever, like whether they feel like it's just in a subtle way, and it sounds like in this story a little bit more visceral, I guess.
It's been kind of slotted into genre-wise speculative fiction, which wasn't something I thought it was when I was writing it. But yeah, I think it's probably a good descriptor.
Yeah, actually that's really interesting that it would be slotted into speculative fiction, but I'm sure because it also, like, I think that it involves an earthquake as well on the West Coast, and some of those real life phenomenons that are actual dangers that are possible, and yet maybe like the news loves to say every few years, it's coming, the big one, it's coming, and well, maybe, or maybe in 100,000 years, I don't know. But like there are, those make for really dramatic books too, because like it is always, even when I traveled to the West Coast last summer, I went to BC in August. In my mind, I was like, yeah, there could have some anything happen here. Even though I knew probably not, but it just in the back of my mind. So your experiences of living out west, like was that part of being, immersed into nature, being immersed into all of this that helped you figure out how to write a book that allowed your character to enter it?
Yeah, I think I wanted to. The impetus to write a book that was set more in nature than in urban settings was there because that's where
Yeah.
I love to be. It's not that I don't love cities. It's just that my most intense experiences have happened in nature.
Yeah, for sure. It makes a lot of sense. So just moving back a little bit, I think you did an English degree, I think, in Ottawa, you said.
At
Um,
the Toronto.
oh, of UT. Okay. So experiences in Ottawa and Toronto for all of those folks who are listeners there. Um, and then you move on to tree planting, and then you finally thought, okay, I'm going to write a book. Like after all those years. And so you said what, like, did Mad Honey start as a short story? Or did you say step into Ladder to Heaven?
Ladder to Heaven started as a short story.
Okay.
Writing happened because like as many people, I had a midlife crisis, and
As happens, yes.
yeah, it was pretty spectacular. At 43, I got divorced and remarried, and I got sober, which was a big one. It hadn't been a lifelong thing, but I had crept into my life. My parents struggled with it, and yeah, I just realized I was an alcoholic and I needed to get sober, and that was a huge thing for me. So all of that happened in 6 months.
Yeah.
My whole life, and my daughters were teenagers, and they were furious, and their lives were upside down. And in the midst of all of that, my new partner said, "What would you love to be?" We brainstormed what would be. His life imploded too, actually.
Yeah, yeah.
And so we sat down and created a giant map, a brainstorm of what would our lives look like if they looked the way we wanted them to look. And one of the things that came up was writing for me. Yes, that's really what I always wanted to do. And my husband said, well, why don't you do that? Like, I think you should.
Yeah. That gives me chills because I think that like to have everything kind of disintegrate or explode or however you want to describe it, and then to stop and actually pause on what could our lives look like, right? How many of us just keep doing the thing, doing the thing, doing the thing, right? And never really stop to see, is this what I'm meant to do? Is this what I want to do? Am I in the right place? Like, I think there's a lot of fear around change, around making a different decision, around expectations and all of those things. But when you pause and look at your life like that, like what a phenomenal opportunity to kind of like reset and start again and fall. Like you always knew you wanted to write. It's there. It's always been there. So you decide you're going to write this novel. Did it come out as a novel at first? Did you know that what that was, or did you just start thinking, okay, I want to work on something and I'm going to play with ideas? Or did you start taking classes, or how did that go?
That's a funny story because I had a construct in my head that I was a novelist. I love reading novels. I mean, I stopped writing, but I never stopped reading. I just devoured novels all the time. And so I thought, well, when I write, it's obviously going to be a novel. And I started Mad Honey, and I applied to the Banff Centre at that time for the Emerging Writers Intensive, and I got accepted.
Amazing. And
my mentor there asked me, why are you writing short stories? And I said, no, I'm a novelist. I don't write short stories. He said, I can't believe you're not writing short stories. And I never had tried them before. So I had the novel in progress, and I set it aside for a little while to try my hand at short stories. And that actually opened a whole learning curve for me, because the process of submitting short stories to literary magazines is really formative and was so important. And if I hadn't had that mentor, I wouldn't have gotten into it. And partially because of the rejections. I mean, you don't know until you know. And I had some great editors. I mean, there's just an incredible community in Canada
Yeah.
of editors and people who run literary magazines, really willing to help. People who would get back to me and say, this is good, but maybe just this or just that. And each time I would rework the story a little bit more. And from that learning curve, I applied what I learned there to my novel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's an important point to make, I think, because when you're starting to write, I think we don't always know what we don't know. And that, like you say, writing short is, it has to be tighter. It has to be like this whole story has to be like there. And it just teaches you so much about structure and craft and pace and dialogue and like everything. So I think it's important that people write short pieces. And I have several, I mean, like Catherine Mockler, there's people write like that's what they write is a lot of short. And I admire that so much because I think it's really hard. Like it's hard.
I agree. I find it much harder than a novel.
Yes. I agree too. And that's why my short stories are kind of buried in the internet somewhere. Probably I don't want to highlight them too much because they're like okay, but now when I look back at them I think, well, they're not that good. So, like I think it's such a craft to write a solid short story. It's great training ground for anyone who's beginning. And then, so you're writing all these short pieces and you've been to like in Banff for those people who haven't been to Banff or haven't heard about it. Like it's such an incredible place for writers and getting mentorship and all of those things. So then did you start the novel there or did you start writing short pieces or?
I was accepted on the basis of one of the chapters of the novel. So the novel was underway and it was workshopped, which also because I hadn't done an MA, I had never workshopped before. Lots of the other people in the program had.
Yes.
So I also learned about workshopping.
Yes.
And went through that trial by fire.
Yes.
Which was great, which was fantastic too. I got to all this feedback on the novel, and then I took that away and worked really hard on the novel. And then I actually had an agent for a short time, Carolyn Swayze. This was because in 2017, that the whole situation, UBC Accountable, had happened at UBC in 2016. And I think the creative writing program at UBC had tanked because they offered these summer programs I think to kind of build their creative writing program again. Right. I didn't know much about any of that. So that was all just sort of background noise for me. I had kids but I did see there was Practice, Purpose, Passion, this program that was a one-day program to basically learn about the publishing industry in Canada. And I signed up for that. Carolyn Swayze was there as a literary agent. And my book was now, I felt, quite a finished manuscript ready to go. And I pitched her. I was really out of my comfort zone, completely out of my comfort zone. And plus she was surrounded by all these other people. And I'm usually a fairly polite person, but I literally elbowed past people. And elevator pitched this book, these a man turns into a beehive, and she just went, email me. Just send me that. Okay, I'll read it.
Yes.
And from there, she agreed to represent it and shopped it around. And Walter Can Win, my publisher, luckily for me, Paul Vermeer read the manuscript and acquired it for Walter Can Win.
Amazing. That's such a great story. Great story. And a lot of writers are introverts or they're, quieter. And I love that you just took the chance. And were you ready with an elevator's pitch? Because I think that's what people should be ready because you never know when that opportunity comes. Did you kind of know, or was that sort of on the fly?
No, people have been asking me. I've been working on the book for long enough that people have been asking me, what's your book about?
Perfect.
Long enough that I realized what was coming out of me was this terrible paragraph that was sloppy and I wasn't explaining it properly. So I had inadvertently, not thinking of pitching a literary agent, I had inadvertently shortened it to a bite-sized piece.
Yeah, perfect. And then you were ready because, there's so often I think people, like I've been asked to, what's your book about? And I like, oh, you just kind of stumble around for a little bit unless you have that kind of short version of it that you can say, this is it. That's an incredible story. I love how that happened for you. And so then how long between Mad Honey and Ladder to Heaven? Was there a big space there, or did you start working on that second book right away? Or what was the trajectory for the next one?
Because I was 43 before I started writing seriously, as a trying to have a writing career, I feel like there was a dam that broke at that point. It's not like I had all these stories plotted out, but at this moment that Mad Honey was acquired, I immediately started working on the next novel, and I'm actually working on my next novel now. I just finally have the opportunity to work on my writing, so I can't seem to stop. I mean, I'm a little bit obsessive about it. My husband worries.
I think it sounds healthy. A healthy obsession when you finally have the opportunity, right? But I
Yeah.
think that's also great, like to have like that book is with a publisher, and then you're like, okay, I'm starting the next thing. Like you're not waiting, you're not like, oh, I'll start the next one later. Like I think that momentum is good to keep going, and that you have another project to work on, and you're always looking forward. Can you is it too early, or can you tell us a little bit about what the third book is about?
I would actually love to tell you a little bit about the third book, my third novel manuscript, because when you approached me about this podcast, I got the shivers because I set this book in Thunder Bay, which was
No
the first,
way.
yes, it was the first place that I went tree planting.
Amazing.
And my publisher, Walls Look and Win, had mentioned it would be kind of cool to read a story set in a tree planting camp. And I put it off and put it off. And then I started writing this book. And in Thunder Bay, as you know, there's a big population of, I think it's the biggest population of Finnish people outside Finland. Is that correct?
So I don't know what the numbers are currently, but it's between Thunder Bay, Sudbury, Toronto, and there's quite a few in Vancouver as well. But Thunder Bay and Sudbury have always been in those top numbers. So I'm not sure who's in the lead at the moment, but for sure.
So between that and when I started writing it, I started writing basically kind of a mystery, and it struck me that what the real mystery was why are these forests being logged to the extent that they're being logged, and what is the impetus behind that? And that also got mixed up with the missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
The similarity between those, and not similar, the connection between how women are treated and how forests are treated. So that's kind of the germ at the center of my next novel.
Oh, so good. I love that idea so much. I love that you're setting it in Thunder Bay too. Another place I'm fairly familiar with. Oh, so good. So just in terms of writing process, you probably get this question a lot, and I get it too. Are you a pantser or a plotter? Where do you stand in those camps, or somewhere in between, like many of us?
Somewhere in between,
Yeah.
for sure. Not a total plotter, but I do love plotting my novels.
Yeah.
But I don't do it necessarily totally in advance.
Yeah.
I mostly pants it, but I also really love things like red herrings.
Right,
and
right.
The things that I love, I always want to put into my novels, the things that I love to read, and revelations are wonderful to me, or things that, you don't see it coming, you turn the page and you're actually out of breath. I want to do that to my readers so badly, and you have to plan those things. You can't just pants those out, I don't think.
Yeah, good point. Yeah, that's a good point. And it sounds like you have a pretty solid idea of what you're going to be writing about in terms like just this is sort of the thematic area, this is like the setting, this is, and then you just pants it from there, and plot in those special things that you want to have happen. I think that makes a lot of sense for writers, because it gives you that freedom to let it run its course, and you can be surprised by it too. I like to plot probably a little bit more than that, but only because I feel like I'm not as confident about where it's at, and then I let it change. But yeah, there's an argument to be made, I guess, for all of these methods. It's just whatever works for the individual writer, I suppose.
Well, you write mysteries, don't you?
I write historical fiction and cozy mysteries.
Okay.
And so the cozy mystery, I feel like I need to plot it out more initially because of the puzzle, because of having to know where it's going to land. But I've heard of cozy mystery writers who just pants it and figure out who did it later.
Wow.
I need to know who did it.
Yeah, really.
But for historical mystery, I think it's a little bit different because there's so much time spent researching and understanding the historical context and the people and all the things, so that when I'm writing, sometimes the story is emerging as I write, and then in a new draft I will change and revise and do all those things. But with cozies, I feel much more confident when I have a plan.
Right.
And it still surprises me, and I'm like, oh, I didn't know that character was going to do that thing.
I love those moments.
Yeah, it's fun. And then just see where it goes, right? Especially in an early draft, you can kind of do whatever and let it meander, and then pull it back in another draft and go, well, that didn't work. Let's take that out or change that or whatever else is happening. Um, so one thing I just want to mention is, when I was looking at your website, you have the most gorgeous photographs, and just stunning. And that is what drew me into seeing the connection between yourself and nature and your books. Like, there's a whole sense of who you are through those photographs, and I really I really love that about your website. So if anyone hasn't seen Katie's website, you should go check it out, because it's just the landscape is phenomenal. Like, it's just eye-catching. And I mean, maybe it's just different enough from Northern Ontario that it made me pause. Even though I love the Northern Ontario landscape too. So when you're writing this third book, are you also then thinking, so you have the what are they called? Like, are they tree planting camps? Is that what you would call them? Or is there some other name?
A lot of tree planting contracts these days are out of motels, so they call those motel shows.
Okay.
But some are still in camps, so they're camps. I know I'm more current with planting because my daughter, I have two daughters. My daughter Heather became a tree planter. She's now a tree planting crew boss, and she's actually planting trees in Scotland as we speak.
Come on. Who knew that
Right.
you could have a career in tree planting and travel the world? Who knew that? Like, that was not on the grade 12 guidance department list of things to do.
Well, it's very rare that someone can do it as a career. There's repetitive strain injuries. I mean, it's a
I
young
bet.
game, right? So she's just enjoying it while she's super strong and really active and loves being outside. So she just
Yeah.
worked through Scotland in the winter. It was absolutely brutal,
Wow.
but she's loving it. Anyway,
Amazing.
I went and guest planted she was in a camp. And I
Yeah.
went back, oh my God, this was only 2 years ago or something. I went back out for one day and it almost killed me.
Yeah. I mean, such a physical job. And like, I can't even imagine. It must be really, really difficult, but it also, I'm sure so enriching. I think about my grandfather, who had a farm in just outside of Sudbury in Wanip. And in the winter, he would go to the lumber camp, and quite the opposite, because they were pulling down trees and transporting them. So like, it's just interesting to see like the different iterations of generations who are like, okay, well, now we need to we've taken them down, now we need to grow them, right? Like the more sustainable aspect of lumbering, I guess. I don't know what that's called. For like forest management, I guess.
I'm pretty cynical about it, and I think that comes out in the book. And of course, living in British Columbia right now, I don't know if you're following this at all, but there's very very little old growth left, and
Right.
it's absolutely insane that any of it is getting cut down because it's just we can never get it back again. It's under 1%, or is it 1% right now? I'm not sure. If you follow the Fairy Creek blockade, there's a group of really brave people, and if I were younger and a little bit closer, I would join them in their protests, just trying to save the very final valleys of old growth in British Columbia, which you would think,
Yeah.
even just the tourism prospect of, people would come from all over the world to see these
Yes.
forests, and we're just cutting them down for toilet paper and
Yeah.
lumber. Like, that's
That doesn't make
insane.
any sense at all.
No.
It's scary, really, to think that it's gone to that point where we can't return to that. Like, once they're gone, they're gone. And sure, we can, like, I mean, yes, absolutely replant, do all those things, regreen places, but we can't get to the stage where that we have that kind of forestry anymore. And I mean, I had a real interest in when I was writing a historical novel that I haven't published yet, but had lots to do with trees, and like I'm forgetting the titles now, but one of them I think is The Secret Life of Trees. And one of them was all about sustainability and what's happening in some of the Nordic countries, and some of the mistakes we've made about planting all kinds of certain kind of tree in an area that those trees don't sustain each other, like that naturally the different kind of trees will sustain the growth of other trees and like a natural forest instead of like this planted forest. So I think there's so much to unpack there that I just don't know enough about, but I'm so fascinated by it.
One of the themes of Ladder to Heaven is that we are continually surprised by nature, and that's part of the rationale behind the animals talking in Ladder to Heaven.
Yeah.
Is that it's really not that far fetched that there would be something about nature that we don't understand, because there are always things we don't understand about nature, and the scientific method is great. And yes, but can we stop patting ourselves in the back, please? And have a closer look at what's really happening. Suzanne Simard is incredible. The Mother Tree, that book is
That Mother Tree is one of the ones I read. Yeah, that was such a good book.
phenomenal book. And just realizing that mycelium, that the fungi and the forest floor are actually connecting all these trees. And I think the biggest aha moment of the Mother Tree for me was that instead of competing with each other, there was always this competitive, I want to say very masculine, perception that forest trees competed with each other. Actually, they're cooperating.
Yes, it's incredible.
So can we not move this transfer this to how human beings live? We can
Right.
cooperate. We don't all have to be competing with each other for
Yeah.
resources. And yeah.
Great. Agreed. Yeah. That book was also, I've forgotten the name, but that book was also one of those aha moments for me while I was reading it. And now I like to walk in nature a lot and go to camp and be in the bush and whatever. And I'm often just like looking for that mother tree, like that tree that you can see it's been there a long time. You can see like it's so necessary for the other trees, for shade, for water, for like mineral, like I don't know if it's minerals, but like the like nutrients, I guess, from that tree. If some other tree is failing, it can draw from the roots of the mother. Like it's like so incredible to me. And I just love how you said like, well, why can't like human beings be more like that? And I suppose we have that happening to some degree in some places, but it's a real feminine attribute, isn't it, to be maternal and to be caring and to be compassionate and non-competitive and supportive. And I think we need more of that, like in politics, please.
Yeah,
Have a little more of that.
absolutely. And I had just become, I'm about to go to my granddaughter's first birthday party next week. And becoming a grandmother really made me think about the mother tree too, because I didn't expect to be, I wasn't one of those women who desperately wanted a grandchild,
Yeah.
but I was thrilled. And the amount that I've been involved in this baby's life and in my daughter's life has really had me thinking a lot about the family and how we do all support each other, and what you were saying about the feminine nurturing. And yeah, there's
And it's one of the reasons why I think like even in like bringing it to the literary community, um, why I love this community, because I find writers to be overall, like I mean, you can never generalize too much, but overall, just a giving, supportive community, nurturing each other. Like you said earlier, all kinds of people will help and edit and provide some advice. And everyone's just trying to lift each other up rather than feel like, oh, I'm competing for a spot in a whatever. Like I just feel like that's not not the general rule, right? We're it's a much more compassionate kind of community, and I feel like that's not what we're seeing in other sectors. Like if I think of, I don't know, almost anywhere else, I think, well, it feels like this is sure there's the business aspect, there's an industry aspect to it, but it's like the people are just really giving, and I think that's such an important thing. So maybe we're like drawing a little bit from the mother tree in our
There's
industry.
bad actors everywhere for sure.
That's
I
true.
agree with you. My experience has been a lot of generous people and I have had wonderful mentors and my colleagues. There are still some bad actors in the public publishing industry as well, unfortunately.
Unfortunately, yes. And that is true of everywhere. But I'd hold on to the hope that we're we hold on to the positive aspects of it, I hope, and maybe the negative ones will transform as we go on. I don't know. I have to try to stay positive in this time period when things
Yeah.
are sometimes a little on the dark side. But I think it's important to be realistic too, right? About like we're, even when we're talking about the environment, um, and all the challenges and changes in weather patterns and all the things that are happening, I think it's really important that we're not closing our eyes to those things and being realistic so we can enjoy the fact that the sun is shining and the snow is melting, or that we don't have snow this year, except that that's not okay. There's something bigger happening, right? So I don't know, just I love the fact that you are very tuned to that and that you're looking for ways to share your knowledge with people through fiction or through activism. I think that's incredible. It's very inspiring, Katie.
Oh, well, they're my passions. So it's a joy and I love to write, so it's a joy to share what fascinates me through my writing.
Amazing. Well, I want to thank you so much for taking a coffee break with me and having a chat. It was delightful. And I feel like I'm going to walk away thinking about trees and forests and the environment and just continue, like it's like I'm such an advocate for being in nature and feeling like we're part of everything. Like I don't think of us as like, oh, humans in nature, like we're a part of it. And so when talking to you makes me think about all kinds of perspectives when I'm out there and taking my walk and enjoying the sun and watching the snow melt, but also remembering that this is a planet we have to take care of. And I love that you're talking about it in your fiction.
I couldn't have said it better myself, and I love that that's how we're winding this up. Thank you so much for having me on your podcast.
Oh, you're so welcome. Thank you, Katie.
Thank you so much.
I believe writers need Sisu, strength, courage, and determination to get their projects done, and I can help you access your Sisu. Are you working on a novel or memoir? You don't have to do it alone. Join us in the Women Writing Circle. We meet bi-weekly for 90 minutes to get pages done. Or consider applying for an upcoming group book coaching program to develop the foundational elements of your story in a supportive community. These 8-week-long programs include weekly coaching calls, goal setting, craft discussion, and personalized feedback on writing tasks. If you'd prefer to work one-on-one, contact me about one of my coaching packages at liisakovalabbookcoach.com. Thanks for taking time out of your schedule to have a coffee break with us at Women Writing. Don't forget to subscribe to Women Writing on Substack. If you like this episode, share it with someone who needs a writing break and a little inspiration. Happy writing! Thank you to Michael Jensen for his original music and editing, and to Mia Jensen for the logo design.